Whoever's logged, it's live now.
I just pressed the button.
All right, we are live, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to episode 3 of the Diaries of a Black Girl in Foster Care podcast. We're excited to be joining you this evening from all different states to bring you our own perspectives on today's topic, which is the adultification of Black girls in foster care. So before we get started, I'm going to quickly introduce myself, share my pronouns, and we can also say where we're at. So my name is Amani Myers, coming to you from Tulsa, Oklahoma, and my pronouns are she, they. People jump in.
I can go. I am Tasha Robertson Wing. I am currently in Columbus, Ohio, and my pronouns are she, her, hers.
My name is Angela Quijada Banks. I'm in San Diego. My pronouns are she, her, hers.
My name is Casey Getty, and I am from New Jersey, and I am in New Jersey, and my pronouns are she, her, hers.
I am. Sorry, 1 second. Sorry.
Double. It's okay. I can introduce Alexandria Ware, aka Alex. Pronouns are she, her, and she's in Wichita, Kansas, I believe. I hope I got that right.
Yes.
Hey, okay. So just want to say, even though that this is a podcast focused on Black girls, we also want to state that we are also inclusive. So any of you all who don't identify as female, we want to also invite you to the space. So those who are transgender, non-binary, or use no labels, you all are also welcome into the space. And so we just want to say thank you all for being here. Also, we talked about, adultification, and we're bringing this to you from our own perspectives. And we just want to just put it out there that adultification is sort of a new term that has sort of cycled through our world in the last few years. And so it's not a subject that we're pretending to be experts on, but what we will say is that because we are, Black women, who've experienced adultification in various different forms, we think that it's a really important topic to talk about. And so I'm just going to give a definition of what adultification means and sort of like where it sort of originated from. And so in 2017, the Georgetown Law Center on Poverty and Inequality released Girlhood the Erasure of Black Girls' Childhood, a report that presented the findings from their qualitative analysis of a form of gendered racial bias against Black girls. So adultification, basically it's a bias, it's a stereotype in which adults view Black girls as less important. Actually not less important, excuse me, yes, that, but as less innocent. In other words, adultification, than their white peers. Devoid of any type of individualized context. So in other words, adultification bias is not an evaluation of maturity based on observation of an individual girl's behavior, but instead it's a presumption or a typology applied that's usually general to Black girls. And so as we talk about adultification, I also want to make sure that we hold a moment of silence to our little sister, Micaiah Bryant. For those of you who do not know, she was the young girl that was in foster care and was gunned down by the police. And so I'd like to take a moment of silence to Micaiah Bryant and others that we've lost in the struggle. Thank you. So we're going to kind of just jump right in. I'm going to start off with the first question. I want to ask, so in what ways did you all experience adultification while in foster care? and anyone can sort of jump in. And also, I want to be able to say that there are some articles that will be placed in the comment section so that you all will have access to uh, the topic so that you all can also learn more about it.
I
So,
can I can jump in. Um, so for me, I never really understood while I was in care that I was experiencing adultification. Um, I just knew that I wasn't getting necessarily the services that I needed. And that sometimes I was kind of seen as like, oh, she got it, she's stronger. But it was when I like went to a conference. I went to the Congressional Caucus Annual Legislative Conference, and it is a phenomenal film called Push It Out, as a documentary. And I was sitting there listening to this documentary, and they was introducing the term adultification as it relates to the education system and the over criminalization of Black girls, and how they were pushing them out of the education system and within like juvenile systems. And it was the way in which it like was an aha moment for me. I just remember like being in care, and one of the components of adultification is, as Black girls in society, seeming though that you are more adult like, right? You're needing of less protection, and kind of like you don't really need the help. And so I just remember like my caseworker would come, she would not like recommend different like resources, or, it just seems like I was just having this meeting, but I wasn't getting the help that I needed. And so it just was more so I started to notice that, she looked at me more so as a grown woman than an actual child in foster care who had no idea of how life was going to turn out, scared. But because I went to school and got good grades or whatever, I didn't need any help or any protection. Like I just wasn't believed if I ever like spoke out about not feeling safe.
yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. And you spoke to several aspects of and examples of what adultification looks like, and I'd like to sort of share more about those examples, so that people have an understanding of what examples there are. But over sexualization, health issues, not believing their health issues, the pain, their belief around pain, and the tolerance around that, not needing support, which is something that you've mentioned, um, context around hair. I know that we all can speak to what that is like, and also around how we dress and what we should be wearing. And I also want to state that what you're speaking to is something that not just young people in the child welfare system experience, but it's also just Black girls in general, that they face. But we're highlighting and focusing specifically on young people in the foster care system because there's that extra layer um, of stuff that they have to sort of deal with and navigate around.
Yeah. I will say like a lot of this came from the Georgetown Law Center, and they put a lot of effort into some of these surveys, and some of the findings from their studies was pretty much saying that adultification is linked to harsher treatment and higher standards for Black girls. Also, things as I think one of the most shocking things that came out of the study for me was that adultification can be linked to Black girls as young as 5 years old. And it's
Yeah.
like, how, and when it talked about adultification of girls as 5 years old, they were seen as less innocent as their white counterparts. And it's like, how can you look at a little girl and, have these biases or see them as more adult like when they're 5?
Yeah.
I agree. I feel like when I was in care, there was always an assumption that I was already having sex. That was always the thing. And it was so exhausting, so frustrating to try to like prove my purity in a sense, to prove my innocence. Like I am not even worried about that. Like I'm actually focused on my schooling. Like, yeah, I want a boyfriend, but that doesn't automatically mean I'm having sex. It doesn't automatically mean I'm just busting it wide open for everybody. Like I'm really just chilling over here. Like I'm focused on my career. Like I don't understand why there's all this focus on like, oh, she's having sex and who is she with and what is she doing and where is she going? And it's like, dang, can I just live? Can I just be? Can I just like, can I be myself? Can I be a youth? Can I be a young girl? Like, oh my gosh, like I really didn't see that, you know, I know now that people my age were having sex, but I personally was not. And a lot of times it were the girls that were not Black girls. It were the girls that were in my particular situation, moving to a lot of white predominant schools. It was very interesting. Like I'm the one that's like, no, I don't want to do nothing with you. Like I'm save myself till marriage. And it just was like this focus on like, oh, what is she doing? Is she doing this? And really the assumption already that I was doing all the things. And I don't know, I felt like it was just exhausting to try to prove that I wasn't.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up that point, Angela, because I remember myself. I was in foster care at the time, and I was staying in a foster home, and I had went to the OBGYN. I was like 15 or 14 or 15 at the time, and you know. What do OBGYNs always do? Offer us females? They always offer us birth control. Like,
Oh my God.
and so, they had offered me birth control, and I thought like that was like the right thing to do, to take it. And like the foster mom, like she literally like was like yelling at me and was like very upset because she's like, oh, why do you want to be on birth control? I'm like, they just offered it to me. I thought that's what we're supposed to do. Like, oh, that must mean that you're out here trying to do something. No, I'm not out here trying to do anything. Like, I just thought that this is like a part of like, you know, life. Like they talk about it in school. So I'm like, oh, maybe I should be on this. And you know, it just was like very like I'm like, why does she get so upset about being on birth control? Like, why do I have to be having sex to be on birth control? And after like that, like I was labeled promiscuous. Because I wanted to be on birth control because I was interested in boys, which at the age of 14 or 15, that's a normal thing to be interested in.
Right.
And, yeah, it just was very, it was like, wow, like, why did I have to experience that?
And I think that's another scary thing about adultification, because sometimes you have like these normal developments that you go through as a child or as a teenager. And when you're viewed as adult, like sometimes it is definitely taken out of context. Like you said, I'm going to the doctor, just doing a regular checkup and getting, you know, birth control. And it could have been like maybe you had severe cramps, or maybe like it was an other need for it outside of having sex. But because sometimes like these negative stereotypes of Black women are literally mapped on to Black girls, like these whole hypersexualization, like the stories of Jezebels, like all these things are literally mapped on to young Black girls to the point where you can't even enjoy like normal development because you're seen as older.
Dang, you brought the spirit of Jezebel up just now. Oh my God, took it to church real quick.
But that's just how, you know, society views Black girls.
It's
yes.
true.
And I think that's interesting, Casey, that you brought that up, because for me, it was kind of an opposite end of what you said. Like when I turned 18, I was kind of given an ultimatum of like, you're going to get on birth control in order to sign yourself back into the system to get resources, support, and all these other different things, or not, you know. And it's just kind of like, wow. Or, you know, the not aspect is you're going to be homeless, you figure it out by yourself, you know, go on your own. And, you know, luckily there was no like, oh, you need to bring paperwork and all that, because I was like, I'm not getting on birth control. Like, I don't, my belief system is I'm not trying to have all those hormones and all that stuff in my body. Like, I don't need to do all that, and I'm not having sex. So I don't understand what would be the point of me doing that. Like, that's not a part of my plan. But of course, people couldn't even conceptualize the fact that she is not thinking about having sex, or she's not interested in that. Like, it's already the assumption that of course she is. Of course. Like, that's what she's doing. So I thought that was interesting, Casey.
Yeah, and I think what it also reminded me of as well is like even like how heavily we do rely on statistics and how those statistics also sort of narrate just even how you're talking about the birth control thing. We love to talk about how the high rates of teenage pregnancies among girls in foster care, but we don't talk about sort of what has gone into sort of the conversations before that. You know, the fact that they had you want to be put on birth control in order to sign back into care, you know, that to me is wild. And then also to your experience, Casey, that to me just sounds very familiar, even to my own path. And it's crazy how how things are sort of rooted in sort of your subconscious because, you know, I even remember growing up in foster care and remember for me at that time, I don't think I was having sex at the time. And I remember my foster mom was sort of not making a bet, but more so saying, you know, um, you're gonna have sex, and just kept saying that to me when that wasn't something that I was doing. Now I was doing other stuff, but that wasn't necessarily what I was doing at that time. And I even think that maybe her comments and maybe even the belief that she had on me is what led me to do that. You get what I'm saying? And so I think that we don't
Yeah.
understand that because it was just wild to me. And I'm even having to it's also kind of sort of like a form of gaslighting because I'm standing there and I'm like, I know I haven't been having sex. So
Right.
you over here trying to convince me that I am, and then you get what I'm saying. And so we don't often think about the outcomes or even the very thoughts and the impressions that we put on people. And I even think back to even being told, oh yeah, you're gonna end up like your mother and father, you
Mm.
know. And my mother and father were also pretty promiscuous people. You get what I'm saying? But the fact that um, that the way that they framed it around that, you know, I think that it really does speak to our subconscious, and we sort of can act in those ways. And so for me, what are we doing to perpetuate that in our young people?
And I think that's so scary because um we gotta let people in here. I think it is scary because at the end of the day, Black young girls deserve the right to be perceived as innocent as well. And the fact
Absolutely.
that we gotta be out here labeled as, you know, having sex, but we may not even know nothing about that.
Right.
So that is scary in a sense.
Yeah.
I think it
Do
also
you?
goes back to like the hair, so the hairstyle. So we've all heard from our aunties and everyone like certain hairstyles make you look fast. Like how does a hairstyle make a little girl look fast? And diving into that, like if a little white girl wants to have a whole bunch of braids and box braids, she don't look fast. She looks cute, and oh, she wanted to try it. Like why are we being mean? But if a little black girl wants some weave in her hair, she looks fast because weave is not for little kids. So it's even rooted in within our own community of we see little black girls as fast. And it's so impressed into us to be like, oh, well, that little girl, 3 year olds, and wearing those booty shorts. She gonna be fast. Why her parents got her wearing them shorts? She about to be fast. No, the little girl probably just woke up that morning and wanted to put on some shorts and go outside and play with her friends or her animals and call it a day. It does not mean she gonna be fast. And even the all the language we use is a problem. We use so much language that we need to decolonize within ourselves in our own community to make sure people understand that like if a little girl decides she wants to wear Brock's braids that go down to her shoulders, that's okay. That's her parents' choice. That ain't got nothing to do with you. Is it paying your bills? No. Does it have anything to do with what's going on in your house? No. So don't speak on it. Because you get mad when white people speak on black people's stuff. So why are you helping them speak on things that we all are tired of? I mean, all of us on this podcast is tired of seeing little black girls not being innocent. I have 5 nieces and 3 nephews. And I get tired of having to tell my niece, like, oh, well, in society, they're going to say you look fast because you're wearing a crop top. But baby, if you want to wear that crop top, wear that crop top. Let that fupa hang. Like, just let it hang. Like, if that's what you want to do, do what you do, boo. But at the same time, a lot of the things that we've all experienced aren't just things that we've experienced in foster care. They're things black girls experience all over. And how does that to me is a problem, that we experienced it in the system, but at the same time, kids are experiencing it every day throughout life.
And I think to that, I wouldn't say everyone, but some of these studies can contest that Black girls have routinely experienced adultification bias. But I think, to Amani's point earlier, when we talk about having this adultification bias, and then we add that extra layer of being in foster care, what does that look like? And how does that impact the way that Black girls are being served?
Yeah, one of the things that I think about is when I think about sort of the traumas that Black girls are having to experience in their everyday lives. And when you come into the foster care system, there's that extra layer of trauma that you're having to navigate and you're having to experience. And depending on where you are or who you've been placed with, it may be different culturally, it may be different to varying degrees. And so as we know that a lot of times our behaviors really sort of determine the sort of some of the things that we've gone through. And so if you are already showing up in a space, like I remember for me, I remember I was being made fun of because I had grown up in foster care, and I went to go fight the girl because she threw a pencil at my head and it hit my head, and I went after her. And I remember the white teacher, he ended up coming after me, and he was literally about to press charges. But instead of them being able to see that I was in foster care, that there was a reason why I had responded in the way that I responded, they weren't able to sort of put those together and to critically think about it. His first reaction was to sort of press charges. And I believe that it was actually a person of color that sort of came to my aid to sort of let him know sort of my history, my background. And then also me writing a letter, apology letter, because that was not something that I was wanting, especially I was in the 11th grade at the time. So, colleges, I really didn't want that to be impacted. And it reminded me of the article earlier in a reading, and how this young girl said that because she got into a fight, she ended up having an assault charge on her record. And therefore, she wasn't able to go to another school. They wouldn't accept her because of that charge, versus looking at how she got that charge in the first place. And so we don't always think about how the impacts and also the little things that follow suit with it.
That made me think of empathy, and another like side effect of adultification and why it is so dangerous is adults have less empathy for Black girls than comparing them to their white peers. Like, when you think about this in the context of foster care, like, you have to be empathetic for these Black girls experiencing the foster care system. But if you have this adultification bias that is hindering you from being empathetic towards these, Black girls, that's a problem. That's hindering how you serve this population in need. That's hindering how you are able to do your job, because you're not able to empathize with them because you're seeing them as a grown woman or adult like. And so in your case, we're lucky that somebody was able to empathize and say, she's having a tough time. She's in foster care. And I think that is something we all should be keeping in mind as we work with Black girls, empathizing. That's one of my biggest motto throughout this world is just be empathetic, because you never know what somebody else is going through.
And to add to that point, I think we just need to get back to putting people in the work, like being human focused. So even adding the empathetic, but looking at that person as a person, like that's just it. It's we are people. I mean, we all got things going on. Even today, people are probably like thinking about different things. Brains are, in different places, but at the same time, we don't put those people first. We don't have that anti-racist framework where we're looking at people to walk along the walk with them and not for them. So I think that's something else.
Yeah, I love that. I don't know why I'm hearing myself double. Um, but I was gonna say that in talking about having empathy and having it being people centered, are there other things that you all think that we need in order to sort of think about the impacts of our young people? Like, what other things are you feeling that we're needing?
Um, One of the things that I would say that the field needs is, and definitely as it relates to adultification, is knowledge of adolescent development, and people understanding that how the brain develops, and that adolescence is a very critical time for when the brain is developing. And so young people always take risk, and because their prefrontal cortex is still developing, and their limbic system is going crazy. And so, you know, if we have that understanding, if people have that understanding, they would know like this young person is not, or this young girl is not an adult. Like, to be quite honest, like our brains aren't fully developed until like the age of 26, and for boys it's 30. So but but our the brain, an adolescent's brain is still developing. So really having that understanding and making sure that the people that are working with young people know this and can take adultification out of their mind.
Yeah, and I think also added to what you're saying, I think we also need to include the physical aspect, because also times the physical body will mature faster than the brain. And then also if there's trauma that's been involved, you might develop slowly in other areas, but it may not all match up. And so I know that there are girls who whose body parts have sort of formed earlier than what research has suggested. And so we have to also understand that just because their human parts are forming, it doesn't necessarily mean that, you know what I'm saying, you have to make those connections, because people are maturing faster than we think, and also we have to include that aspect in there when we're talking about this, because I know that for Black girls, especially, especially with stress and trauma, your body parts will form faster, and so we have to remember that as well.
Yeah, what I'd like to add to that, oh, is definitely the historical context. And Alex was talking a little bit about that earlier, about decolonizing and bringing back to humanity. But that's really, I think, the center of it, right? That was how I was personally introduced to the word adultification. And then Tashe kind of brought it to light in the foster care space. So for me, it's really, how are we recognizing how adultification has historically been a part of the different oppressors' context in their ways to justify their inhumane actions, right? So when we're talking about humanity, we're also talking about what has been the context of inhumanity. Adultification is one of them, but what are all those different ways that it's actually showing up and causing a lot of harm in the ways that, and in spaces where we're saying we're centering safety and we're centering well-being and families and community. Are we really? How does adultification bias supporting that? It's not. So how are we moving forward being able to have those practical ways to implement and center humanity at the forefront?
Yeah, I agree with all of you. And I think something that we don't think about is identity. Young people are developing their identities when they're teenagers and they're adolescents. And so that looks different. And you're going to play with your identity constantly throughout adolescence. And I mean, even into adulthood. And I was talking with someone the other day who said, like, their 20-year-old kids, you know, are starting to, like, be really mean to them. They're like, but why? And then, like, well, they're finally seeing, like, we were terrible human beings and they're calling us on our stuff. But it just goes back to, if you don't have those experiences to even think about what is my identity, you're going to be searching for it. And so those are things to also think about. It's like, how can we bring that identity and connecting young people back to their culture so then they understand their culture roots and understand their identity? Because a lot of times when kids are in foster care, black girls, whoever, they're taken from their culture and they're put in homes that don't understand them, that don't understand that my hair is not a luxury. Like, I need oils in my hair. I need my hair done. I need it retwisted. I may not have a retwist right now, but listen, it's coming, okay? And when it comes, it's glorious, okay? Because in our community, our hair is our crown. That's the epitome of it. Like, if your hair ain't done, people are like, ooh, baby, why your hair ain't done? You looking a hot mess. You okay? Everything all right? Do you need help? But understanding that's where we come from. Like, our hair is important, you know? It's just one of those things that you have to understand people's identity and what they see as their identity, and how can you introduce that to adolescents and make sure, or even younger, and it's age appropriate. So that's something that also I think will help with adultification.
I really love that you said it wasn't a luxury, because I feel like a lot of times it is categorized as that, like, oh, you know, you can go without it. Like, no, just because, you know, white girl can put her hair in a bun and it looks good, I'm gonna look homeless. Okay, I'm gonna look homeless. So I'm gonna need some necessary steps to prioritize this as a necessity. This is, you know, day to day what is a priority. If I don't do my hair, I'm gonna look homeless, and you're gonna ask what's wrong with me, what's going on, is there something? There probably is something going on if my hair's not done. But yeah, like, I love that you said that.
Yeah, and I was gonna ask, in terms of like what we should be doing. I think that there's more research that should be done, but before we can do the research, it has to be more awareness of adultification and its impacts on the foster care system. And so when I like say impacts, I am like almost certain, even though I really am hoping to have more research. But when you look at the treatment of Black girls in foster care, like, this is something that we have to talk about. Black girls are linked to having more placements than their white counterparts. They're also receiving services at a slower rate than their white counterparts. They're having more linkage to human sex trafficking. And it's like all of these disparities that I can only imagine is a product of adultification bias, because we aren't seeing them. And so in order for us to really do something, we have to call on those that are in authority roles, asking for them to desegregate like some of the data that's already out there, start becoming aware of these disparities and putting a name on it. Like, this is a product of adultification bias. So if anybody that is working in the field and is listening, start really helping to spread the awareness of the impacts of adultification bias on Black girls within the foster care system. That's a start where we can have, but also having more cultural competence. I'm more of a cultural humility type of girl, but having more of those cultural competence and gender responsiveness type of trainings and educations, so that we can be more aware of what's happening and how to fix it, and make sure that we are writing those referrals for the best services for our Black girls in care.
Yeah, no, I like that you said that, especially around the cultural responsiveness, cultural humility, cultural competence. I think we need it all, because especially when it comes to, like you said, hair, when it comes to even clothing, when it comes to health things, when it just when you understand sort of our culture, when you understand even the harshest parts of it, if you understand that, it really will give you a better understanding of how to navigate this. Because I do find that, given that you said, given what we know, that the overrepresentation of Black and brown girls in the foster care system, and even just kids in general, um, thinking even also to the resources, thinking about the givers, the people that hold the space, the people that are responsible for this, do they look like us? So how is it that they're able to efficiently and effectively sort of care for us in the way that they can if they're in these spaces? You know?
Yeah. Oh,
Go ahead. I was
okay.
just gonna say, you took us to church real quick. That's all I was gonna say.
Okay.
I was gonna say on your point about Mani, about caring for us, another thought that has come to my mind was around like how Black women and Black girls are perceived in the family. And even in the Latino family as well. Like women are perceived as the matriarchs. They are perceived as the caregivers. They are the ones that take care of everybody. They're the ones that take care of home. And so when Black girls and Black and brown girls are placed in the foster care system with their siblings, they have this idea and thought that they have to take care of their siblings, and it shouldn't be their job to do that. It should be the system's job, because you are supposed to be the parent now, quote unquote. So it's the system job. And so I'm glad that you brought up that point, Amani, about the system needs to take better care of Black and brown girls in the system, and just young people in the system in general, so they don't have this weight on their shoulders like, I have to do this for my siblings. I have to be the role. I have to be the example. I need to make sure that they're okay in the foster homes that they're in, if they're not placed with me. And even if they are placed with me, that we're the protectors. We're the ones that are going to protect them. And so just that thought had also came to my mind as well.
Yeah. And one of the things that I thought about, I don't know why I keep doing that. Maybe they want us to hear it twice, so I'm not mad. But one of the things that I thought about as you were sharing is about how the system just, it also needs to be a little more trusting. And what I mean by that is that we think about parents. Sometimes we don't think about the intersections that they also care and things that they hold. And so when a child is removed from their care, oftentimes they're villainized. They're seen as not able to sort of care for the child anymore. And even though they may not be able to care for them in a particular way, doesn't mean that they don't know how to take care of them in all ways. And so one of the things that I think about is, granted, I was in a Black foster home, and I will say that my foster mother was older. And so she would do my hair a certain way, and then I would go to my visits with my mom, and she was like, why's your hair looking like this? Or even my clothing. And so my mom would take out the style that my foster mother did and have different clothing for me. And then so when I would go back to the foster home, that caused it's like I became a target in a way, because I became sort of this target that my foster mom just didn't like. And the fact of the matter was, like, I don't understand why you're in foster care if she couldn't take care of you. So why is she giving her perspective now? And at the time, as a kid, that was something I was thinking about too. So I was really resentful of my mom, because I was like, I felt that she, in a lot of ways, sabotaged my placement, because of those experiences, I ended up getting removed. But as I'm older now, that I think about it, I'm like, well, first of all, my mom also is probably experienced trauma when we got removed from her, and in a way of her being able to still have some sort of control, that was her way. And so why do we deem that as something that's negative, when that could actually be a building block in terms of really being able to help with the sort of cultural part of it. Because what makes you think that my mother didn't know best? She may not have known best in certain areas, but when it came to hair, when it came to clothing, my mother knew, you know? And so I do think that it's also about how do we forge partnerships with birth families? You get what I'm saying? Because they are the ones that, in a lot of ways, know best. And some of these foster parents do.
I literally love that you said that. I attended a conference recently, and they talked about how can we move from like saving families and blaming them and being like, oh, poor little Tink Tink don't know how to take care of her kids, so they're better off with little Becky down the street. To actually being anti-racist and working with them, and that's really what that makes me think about is like, they blamed your mom and made it like, oh, we need to save you, and she doesn't know what she's doing, and she'll be better off here, and she doesn't know anything about hair. But at the end of the day, like, parents know how to raise their kids. I mean, those kids popped out of them. They carried those kids for 9 months. They may not raise them to your liking, but they know how to raise those kids. And so how can you, like you keep saying, like, we got to learn to partner, but it's also not even just with the parents, it's partnering with the youth. It's partnering with people who look like us. I mean, we all know that ICWA is a federal law, and a lot of those young people get to be placed in reservations. How can we have something the same way where black and brown kids can be placed with people who look like them? Because I can count on my one hand how many foster homes I lived in that was black, and I live in the state of Kansas. And that's problematic to me. Like, you have a little black kid in the state of Kansas who's only been in 5 foster homes who were black, and the rest of the 55 were white. That screams that's a problem. I was 18 when I learned how to wrap my hair, and I thought I was the best thing since sliced bread. I said, ooh, girl, I know how to wrap my hair now. 18 years old. But my niece who's 17, my niece who's 13, who's 12, they can do hair way better than me. And I'd be like, oh, man, yeah, you got a long way to go. But I wasn't raised around that. So I didn't get that experience to tap into how do I do my own hair. And even foster parents understanding some of those things. I mean, it's just crazy when you start to sit and think about your experience in care and how you were adultified. Like, we black women and black little girls carry this strong black woman syndrome. We got to be Superman. We have to have it all together. No, that's not right. That's not okay. Like, we're not allowed to feel our feelings. Like, if you got feelings, please feel them. If you're in foster care, please feel those feelings. I am telling you, it is okay. You are human. If you are sad, be sad. If you mad and you want to cuss little Becky out, now I'm not telling you to cuss little Becky out, but go cuss somebody else out. Go cuss in your pillow. Go yell. Write it in your journal. Do something. But let those emotions out, because it's not fair that you are taught you got to hold it in and be everything for everybody. Because if you ain't everything for yourself, you can't be everything for anybody else. And that is something that I've had to learn at 29, and I'm constantly learning that I can't be everything for everyone on this podcast, for everyone in the system, if Alexandria Renee Ware ain't taken care of. And that's something that we don't get to do as black girls. We don't get to enter the system and not be okay. We have to enter the system and automatically grow up. Automatically be 18 and learn how to protect ourselves from people who are perverts, from people who just don't care about us, and that's not right. And it has to end. And I'm sorry if it came off a little aggressive, but I'm just done with it. I'm just tired. Like, these kids need to be able to be kids, because at the end of the day, that's all it is. I mean, it really is. They just need to be able to be youth and have fun. And if they want to go out and get ratchet and twerk, hey, let them go out and get ratchet and twerk. You can say your auntie Alex said that.
And also don't apologize.
Yeah, you don't. Sorry,
that was a mic drop.
I was like, I'm afraid to come to you because of double. But hey, okay, there it goes. It's gone. Now, what you all are speaking is truth. Is what we need to hear. It's what child welfare professionals need to hear. It's what doctors need to hear. It's what all of us need to hear. Our communities, our teachers, any of you that have a touch tone to kids, to youth, even to women, black women. recognizing that, because what ends up happening is that these things just don't follow us in our childhood. They follow us into adulthoods. They follow us into the workspaces. They follow us into society because it is a societal problem. And so as we are sort of coming down and winding down, we have about 10 minutes, 12 minutes left. I really want to ask you all, how can child welfare professionals, doctors, or other people that you can think about check their biases around adultification?
I think they have to realize that adultification is a thing. So it may take just the field of child welfare bringing up the conversation a little bit more, talking about it a little more. When we we love a good training, but as we do these trainings that I'm not 100% sure work, have that conversation about adultification bias. But also too, I think one way to build awareness is through analyzing the data that we already have. Um, so like NIDA, all these different data sources, I think they will tell us a story of adultification bias through how the services match up between different identities. So I'm just going to go with awareness. And I think that's kind of where we are with this term right now because it is so new.
What I'd like to add on that, I really see that as like a really big step one. What I would add on that is holding yourself and holding your community partners accountable. So what does that look like? That looks like you're in a conversation, eating lunch on Zoom, and you notice certain conversations going a certain way about said young person, young girl. Have you, starting that, have you heard of adultification bias? I think you should check it out, sending some articles, holding space for that, asking, if you're a part of an organization, asking the executive director, hey, can we have someone come and do a training about it? Really holding space for that. And making sure that we're holding each other accountable, because when we talk about, transforming systems, decolonizing, and those elements, it can sound so daunting, but really we're all made up of people. And so it's really about how are we structuring these relationships to be authentic, to be honest, and to hold each other accountable. So that way, moving forward, our young Black girls in foster care and young children in foster care don't have to continue to deal with this. I mean, it's really exhausting and just like a never ending cycle if people are not holding each other accountable. And that's not just one subgroup, but every single person that's involved in child welfare or out.
Yeah, I love the accountability. I also think leaning into discomfort, because we tend to run when things get difficult. We tend to run when things are not going the way we want them, or if there's a slight thing of change. So lean into that discomfort. And I hear that a lot from one of the people in town who works with a lot of young people in juvenile justice and youth justice. And so leaning into that discomfort, because once you lean into that discomfort and you acknowledge it, there's growth that happens. And once you get on that side of growth, that growth keeps coming and you can see where your organization is, the values you have, and do they align. So always making sure that you're leaning into that discomfort. It may be uncomfortable. I mean, it's gonna be uncomfortable. I'm not gonna say it's gonna be uncomfortable. It's gonna be uncomfortable, but it's necessary to change these systems and to make sure that you're supporting little Black and brown girls, and you're supporting them in understanding that they don't want to be adults. They don't want to be the caretakers. They don't want to be strong to where they don't feel like they can tell people what's going on in their lives. They want to be a kid and they want to have fun, and that's it. And how can you help support them with those experiences of being kids and knowing that they're going to make mistakes? So leaning into that discomfort and just acknowledging that they're kids and they've gone through a lot and they deserve to be kids. So allow them to be kids.
Yeah, I agree. And I think with what you said, with what all of you all have said, also in addition to that is also leaning into your younger self. We all were kids. We all were teenagers. We all went through various things. Some may be blurred, some may not be. But I think at the core of it is tuning back into your younger self and remembering what was it that you needed when you were younger, in moments when adults were stereotyping you or saying things to you that were not necessarily true. So I think if we all lean back into our younger selves and to think about what that may mean, in addition to all of the things that you all have shared, I think that we would definitely be making some headway. Natasha, did you want to add anything?
No, I think we've all spoken of most of the major points. If anything, I would say this is something that we have to continuously have conversations about. It's not going to happen overnight, but it's also a term, and as it relates to foster care, that it's kind of new to us and those in the foster care world. So I just charge everyone with continuously trying to have conversations and being empathetic when it comes to these biases.
Yeah, and as Jeffrey stated in the comment section, first of all, I want to thank you for tuning in.
Hey, that's my dad.
Hey, okay, well, your dad said, awesome, guys. Talking about issues is the beginning of change. Continue to save our queens.
Hey, Dad.
Hey, that's awesome.
I just wanted to add that it really shouldn't be an option, though. Like, it's very oppressive to try to prove yourself against adultification bias, and it shouldn't be looked at as an option whether or not that should be researched and some work being done to be proactive if you're working with youth and young girls in foster care.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that in addition to accountability, it also you also have to look at your internal policies and practices and how do those measure up and how do those align and how those are also misaligned, even in child welfare agencies. So I just want to thank you all. As Tashi has shared, this is like a new topic for all of us, and we're all trying to figure it out together. And so just want to thank you all so much for tuning in. And you can find us. You know where you can find us, but if you don't know, now you know. You can find us on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and all the places where podcasts are listened to. So Spotify, Apple Music, there's a whole plethora now. Did I miss anyone?
No, you didn't miss any. But our handle is at BLK Diaries. Sorry, I lied. It's at BLK GRL Diaries FC. Just make sure that's the right one. But yes, that is where you can find us at on Instagram, on all of our social media platforms, and on Spotify, iTunes, or not iTunes, Apple. Y'all know what I'm talking about.
And I would just like to add to challenge everyone who's watching or will watch or listen to in the future, share this episode with someone you work with. Share this episode with someone who works with youth, especially Black and brown girls. Make sure this conversation is continuing to happen. This is just the beginning. And I'm sure we'll do more talks on this as we are all getting more familiar with this. But making sure that people who are not able to attend tonight, they know that this is out there. So sharing that context as well.
So with that being said, thank you. And we will have some more conversations next week. Or not next week, but next month. So take care, everybody. Bye-bye.